So the next gen Xboxes are here, and whether you have one already or you're just interested, today I'm going to go over a bunch of different lesser known and dare I say hidden features that you might not know about. And there's 7 of them plus a kind of bonus one at the end. And these are going to be either features that aren't explained at all or just maybe are hidden pretty deep in the menus. So starting off with number 1, you'll now have the ability to pre-install games. Even if you haven't even bought it yet, even if it's not a pre-order, you can pre-install and download that game. One situation this is really good for is, say you prefer to buy the physical copy of the game. You can still do this even if you have a physical copy and insert the disc. So maybe you're waiting for it to arrive the next day, you can start that download, install it the same day, and then when you get the disc, it's ready to go, pop in, it'll see the license because you have the disc, and then you can run it without having to load anything off and install it. So to actually do this, what you have to do is go into the Xbox mobile app on either iPhone or Android, and then go into the store and go to that specific game, and then just hit download to console. Now, as far as I know, it's strangely enough, the only way to actually do this download is from the mobile app. As far as I could tell, there's not really any way to do it from the console itself, which is very strange, which does kind of make it even more hidden. Maybe I did just miss an even more hidden setting, and you guys can let me know down in the comments if there is a way to do it from the console, but they might just add that later. But still, to do it now, you just do it from the mobile app. All right, next up, number 2. This is just a little one, but still is useful, and it's how to bring up the screensaver / dimmed idle menu manually right away without having to wait for the Xbox to time out. So this actually will work on Xbox One consoles as well. All you have to do is hold down the Xbox button on your controller. It'll bring up this little menu, and then just press X. And then this will dim the screen, bring up the idle screen. And apparently it also has some built-in screensaver technology, so even though it is dimmed, apparently it's shifting pixels behind the screen, so it's not staying completely static. This is especially useful for OLEDs, or if you have an older plasma, where there is a risk of burn-in. So this is really good if you know you're walking away from the console, you don't want to leave it up on the screen, you can just quickly put on that idle screen. All right, on to number 3, we have the ability to see some very detailed info about game installations. And I believe this also will be available in the Xbox One interface too. To get to this, all you do is go to My Games and Apps, and then hover over one and press the hamburger button, not really sure what it's actually called, and then go to File Info. This lets you see all sorts of data about the installation of that particular game. Most of it is probably useless, but some of it could actually come in handy. For example, you can see the date it was installed, it was last played, and even the last time it was updated, so that all is nice to know. Maybe you're just curious the last time you played it, or maybe you're expecting an update for the game, you can see if it installed that update recently. It'll also show stuff like available languages for the game, and then you can see where it says console type, it'll show you what version of the Xbox the game was made for. So for example, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, it is an optimized game for the new gen, you can see that by the XS icon, and here it says Xbox Gen 9. And then for other games, you can see it says Xbox One, although you could pretty much already see all this info just by looking at the picture and see what it says on the little symbol. So all of this is just kind of like a curiosity if you are interested in it. All right, next up, feature number 4 is the ability to install and uninstall selective parts of the game to free up space if you don't need all of it. So for example, we have Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, it's the new one, and I didn't even buy this. This will still work even if you use the pre-download feature I mentioned before. So basically, if you hover over a game and then you press the hamburger button again, go to Manage Games and Add-ons, and then click into it. Now, if the game does support it, you'll see all sorts of different components. So there's the campaign, the zombies, even things like ray tracing textures, HD textures, stuff like that. So you can get really into detail depending on how the game developers add it in. If you uncheck a box, it'll switch to say will remove, and then you can see on the right hand side, it will actually total up how much space will be saved. So it'll say negative 50 gigabytes or whatever, so you can know, and then if you select multiple, it'll add up the total. Again, this isn't going to be available on all games, just games where the developers made the game modular enough, but hopefully it'll be available on some of the biggest games, for example, Call of Duty, where it has the hugest file sizes in the industry. All right, number 5, we have auto HDR for older games that didn't support HDR natively. This is actually on by default. It's a setting found in general TV and display options, video modes, and then auto HDR. And it basically just works by improving the dynamic range of older games that didn't have HDR built in. So it might make brighter things look a little bit brighter, or darker things darker, or not. It'll probably be adaptive depending on the scene. I'm assuming they're using some kind of AI in there. And this will just work automatically in the background, so you don't have to enable it for the game, it'll just be on. That being said, it won't necessarily work on every single game out there, because from what I understand, Microsoft actually tested a bunch of games, and they went in and selectively disabled disabled it for games where it made things look a lot worse. Fallout New Vegas, for example, is one where it will be disabled. Another one is Fortnite. So it's good to know that Microsoft actually did some testing, so there should not be a reason to disable this and worry about it not looking good, because hopefully that quality assurance was already tested. But if you do notice a game looking really, really bad, that is something you can try just disabling. All right, on to number 6, we have quick resume, but for multiple games at once. So you probably know on the previous generation, you can back out of a game into the main menu. It'll kind of keep running in a suspended state, and then you load it back in and resume where you were. But on the previous generation, if you were to load another game, it would basically close out of that previous one completely. So if you did want to start the other game, you'd have to reload it from scratch again. But on the new generation of Xboxes, you can actually have multiple games stored in a suspended state. It's automatic. So if you switch between multiple games, each of them up to a certain number will be still available to quick resume, so you can kind of just juggle between them. From my understanding, how many exactly can be stored in quick resume is not 100% set in stone, although I've read a bunch of articles that say for the most part they've tested about 5 is usually the number, and this will probably depend on how many resources the game uses, but more than 5 is usually where it starts to kick off previous games. Also, from what I've read, is this might not work very well on certain games. So for example, multiplayer games, if you stop the game from running and store it onto the SSD for a quick resume, then obviously it's going to kick you out of that multiplayer match. So just be aware of that. And it also might not work on certain games, and you'll probably just notice that. All right, finally on to number 7, although I do have a bonus one at the end. It is the hidden troubleshooting menu in Xbox that's very similar to the one you'll see on Windows 10. So to get to this menu, you start off with the Xbox in a off state, and then you hold down the sync and eject buttons, and then press the power button, and then keep holding sync and eject until the console powers on. From my experience when I was trying this out, it only seems to work if the Xbox is completely off. So if you have instant on mode and you're just basically in standby, so it looks off but not really, this won't work. So you can make sure it's completely off by just holding down the power button, and that should shut it down completely. In this menu, there's only a few options, but it's still good to know that it's there. So you can just hit continue to go with a regular boot, or you can actually reset it to factory settings, completely wipe the Xbox, or just turn it off again. Or the last thing you can do is actually manually run an offline update. So if you download update files off Microsoft's website and then put it on a USB drive, after you insert that in, that option will become available, and then you can manually run an update. Maybe if you don't have an internet connection or it keeps failing for some reason, you can do it that way. All right, now finally, I wanted to mention a little bonus feature that you might find cool, and that is that the sync button I mentioned before actually doubles as an infrared receiver. So if you had an older generation Xbox One media remote, it should still work because that IR receiver is built into the sync button, so you can still use not just the new remote, but old ones too. So that's good to know. So let me know down in the comments if there's any hidden features that I completely missed, and also check down there because someone might have mentioned one that I didn't say here. Also, if you want, be sure to subscribe because I'm also going to be making a video about Xbox Series X settings to change right away after you get it, so that should be useful. And I'm also going to make a couple videos similarly about the PS5 once I get that. So be sure to subscribe. Lots of cool videos coming, and I'll see you in the next one.